All right, so thank you for joining us today. I'm Chief, this is Cap, and this is Chap. And so we're going to have a podcast here at Sykes and DPS. We decided to do that for some community outreach, and we just appreciate you guys. Welcome to our podcast. This is our premiere episode of Chief, Cap, and Chap, and who we are. We work at Sykes and DPS, and we're just trying to find ways to engage the community and let people know who we are, what we're about, and we want to try to encourage people in our community that are doing these good things in our region and doing good things for our community. So, many times you hear about these negative things that occur in politics or even in our community. You hear the bad news travels fast. So I just really want to take this opportunity, maybe do this once a week or something like that, and just kind of push it out and tell people stories that are doing these good things in the community, not just police officers or firefighters, but, just people serving their community. And I think that's going to be a good thing if we can do it right. This is new to us, so you're going to have to bear with us. And we want to bring people in and just talk to them, kind of ask them questions about whether they're teachers or educators or nurses or firefighters and things like that, and just kind of talk about what they're doing, why they're doing what they're doing, and tell that story. Just going to kind of ease into this. I mean, that's what I wanted to do. I don't know what you guys had in mind.
Well, you know me, I just like to wing everything. So.
Yeah, you're no help on the organization, that's for sure. But great at what you do, so.
Just wing it.
That's right. Jason, you got anything to say?
So I think it's really good to do our first podcast to give a little genesis as to maybe digging in a little deeper as to what you just said about
right.
What is the inspiration of this podcast, or the purpose of this podcast? What inspired? I mean, this has kind of been your baby. I mean, over the last couple months, you've really been driving home for this. So what inspired you to kind of get started with this podcast?
Well, of course, we're all friends. We, work together. And I just really think that we really miss some of the good things in the community that people do. And we've experienced that here. And I think trying to tell that story is important. We've talked about this, and I mean, we generally have these conversations anyway over different topics. Of course, we all know that. Have a good time having discussions, and
some appropriate and some inappropriate.
some inappropriate, some appropriate. And I just think that that's an important thing. I also want people to understand we're just people. I think that's often missed. Anytime a police officer, there's any kind of scandal, whether it's in Minnesota or in California or whatever, it's the police did this and the police did that. And, we're all individuals. Everybody's got their own careers and their own beliefs. And, as the chief of the department, I try to drive that here of what I think that we should be doing. And I think the community needs to know what we're trying to do and what we want to do. And I think all that's important. So that's why I want to do this. So.
Yeah, I think that's really good. John, you got asked to be a part of the podcast. So what made you say yes?
I really like interacting with the community, and I think this is probably an opportunity for them to kind of get to know me, the real John Broom, not necessarily John Broom, the police officer or the officer that's worked in Sykes. It's just maybe you'll get to learn some things about me that you didn't really know, and maybe you might find some of my jokes kind of funny or something.
Yeah, so I assure you that people will find some of your jokes funny. Maybe not all of them.
Yeah.
But
they're all funny.
Okay. We'll see about that. So the hope of the podcast, then, the inspiration is to tell stories. It's community engagement. I think another thing that really stands out that I'm excited about is the highlighting of other public servants.
Right. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, that just occurred to me. I don't really just want this just to be about us. I think community in itself is made up of so many different people, and so many people are out there working every day to try to make their community better. And of course, in our roles here, we see that all the time. We work with them. We try to achieve these goals together a lot of times. I mean, here in the last, decade, I think we've done really good about just working with these other agencies and try to better our services. And then in doing that, you get to see, programs like Spread Hope Now that have just they get together and they have decided that they saw a need in the community, and that need that they're serving serves us at the department. It serves the citizens in Sikeston, and I'm sure they get some accolades for their achievements, but you know, I'd love to have them in here. I'd love to know what started that program. Why did they do that? What was their motivation? So you're asking me questions like, what's my motivation? I'm curious about these other people, about what they're doing. So I think that's important.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Also, we talked about kind of highlighting some of the officers here
Right.
at DPS, whether they're serving on the street as a police officer or serving in fire. And John, that's kind of your sweet spot. What do you look forward to as we talk to some of these officers over the coming weeks?
Just really hearing about their story. A lot of the guys that we bring here aren't from Sikeston. They may be from different parts of the state, different parts of the country, and just kind of talking to them and finding out, hey, how did you end up in Sikeston? What brought you here? And and some of our local guys that grew up in Sikeston, they became police officers in Sikeston or DPS officers in Sikeston. Hey, why did you want to become an officer in Sikeston growing up here? What's the reasoning why? What brings these guys here? What makes them tick? And, how they landed here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that'll be really good. I was just talking to some of the guys earlier today, and some of the things that they are doing in their personal life that is not necessarily police officer related, but doing things to help nonprofit organizations and volunteering time and donating money. And I think a lot of times we miss hearing those stories from these guys and girls because they're just seen as police officers or firefighters. And we forget that they're also people, and they have to make decisions on if they're going to serve the community and love the community and give back to the community above and beyond just what they do for a living. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing those stories as well. I think that'll be really cool for everybody that's going to listen to the podcast to hear those stories and really shine the light on those that are giving time outside of this place.
I agree. We often hear in our mental health trainings that this humanizing of the badge, I think that was a big part of the motivation of this, and in like you can take our communications division, for example. Now, they're locked away upstairs in the dispatch room. Nobody in the community sees them. By and large, they can talk to them on the telephone, but usually that's in a situation where there's an emergency. They're talking to them. That communications is a lot like our central nervous system, and we might be, as police and fire, the arms and legs of this whole body, and we need that information. It's the public's first contact is with communications, and I intend to get have a communications officer or 2 or 3 or whatever, and really kind of talk to them about their experience. I've never done that job. That job has become so complicated over the years that it'd be really interesting to me to get, especially some of the newer ones, like, what do you like about the job? What do you don't like about the job? And we're always recruiting, and I think it's important that we try to get our name out there and try to understand that we are just people. And I really want to get people from our community to grow that interest in our department. Cause that's the best case scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. There's also this aspect of, and we've said community a lot. And I think it's important that we understand that our community is not necessarily defined by the city property boundaries.
Right.
When we talk about community, we talk about people. And I think it's important that we understand that this podcast isn't just for people from Sikeston. We want people from all over the country and all over the world to hear this podcast, to give us ideas and give us things to talk about. And so we were going to try to keep it interesting like that. I know we're talking a lot of serious things when we talk about public service and stuff like that, but just for full disclosure, we also are expecting that there's going to be quite a bit of silliness happening in this podcast world, and I think that that's okay. We actually talked about what we were going to call the podcast, and we came up very creatively, I would say, with Chief Cap and Chap And you may not be surprised as you're listening, but that was a decision that took, I think, 45 text messages for us to
Yeah, it was involved for sure.
to come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
And then we thought about what about a subtitle? And we threw around different things like uh, serving and silliness and those types of things, because we know that not only do we want to highlight those things that are taking place in our community and highlight those people, but you know what? You may be listening to this and you just need a laugh.
Yeah.
You just need to breathe. You just need 30 minutes of not having to worry about something. And so we want to provide that as well. And that's where John's jokes will come in.
Well, I think, it's funny because really in this profession, public safety profession, if you don't have a sense of humor, this job can be really difficult. So, we always like to crack jokes. We always like to keep it lighthearted. Of course, there's always time to be serious. We have to take care of business and be serious, but we like to crack a lot of jokes, and that's just really kind of, I think, our own for our own mental well-being.
Yeah, but that comes important. I mean, you and I both work detective division, where you got to establish rapport and kind of lighten the mood and get people comfortable to where you can help them with. And when somebody's a victim of crime, you got to kind of try to break the ice so you can develop some kind of relationship so they can see that you're a real person that actually cares. And humor is part of everyday life for no matter what you do. So I don't know if people would really associate humor in law enforcement or firefighting or communications very much. And man, that's just, we do that every day, all day, so.
Yeah, I can assure you that I have been on a couple of trips with these gentlemen and some of the other folks here, and humor is definitely a major part of
Absolutely,
those trips. And I'm sure over the coming weeks you'll hear some of those stories, and they make for good stories and good laughter. And there's probably a good chance we won't be able to breathe at some point during telling them some of those stories.
Yeah. Too bad we couldn't have had these mics at a couple of these conversations. I think would have been pretty good.
All right. So we have, we just wanted to give you a little information about the podcast, about what to expect as far as public service, the initiatives and those types of things. We're going to have some silliness. We also want you to be involved. And so if you have questions that you would like to ask or topics for us to discuss, we would love for you to submit those questions to us. And we do have an email address. Chief, what is that email address?
That's chief.cap.chap@gmail.com. So it's real simple, and we'll post that so people can find it too. And we're still kind of debating exactly where we're going to put this on YouTube or Spotify, but we're planning on once a week, maybe pushing it out on like a Wednesday every week. So
yeah.
Or if you have a suggestion for a show that you want to hear someone in the community that you'd really like to hear from,
absolutely,
give us that suggestion. We'll reach out to them and see if we can bring them on the show.
Yeah, I think what's going to be great, having those suggestions come in and having different people sit at the table with us and laugh with us, tell stories, and we'd love to have those suggestions from you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So also, I want to dig into, while we're just at the beginning of this podcast, and in general, I want to talk about a general topic, and that is the idea of public service in our community. And I'd love for you guys to share, quite simply, why does public service in the community matter?
Well, I think in this day and time, you see this where everybody's really quick to identify the problem. I mean, everybody knows, can say, hey, this thing needs to be fixed, and in law enforcement, I mean, we can't do that ourselves a lot of times. We have to do, most of the time, we can't do it ourselves. We got to work with the community and get their support, and that everything that good happens in the community, there's somebody in the background that is pushing that agenda, not necessarily us, it's somebody else that we're working with. They've asked for our help, and they're trying to make good progress for the betterment of citizens. And so that service in those individuals is paramount for a community. That's that's a big topic, really. But I don't know, you got an idea about that? Or
I just think it's really easy to point out what the problems are in your community, but the hard part is finding the solutions. And really, the solutions don't fall on any one person or organization's back per se. I think it's really just a community approach. It needs to come from all fronts. Whether you're a citizen, a service provider, police officer, city government, whatever. It's a multifaceted approach to really
Right.
solve these problems. It's really easy to point the finger and say, that's the problem. Okay. How as a group are we going to fix that?
Yeah, I mean, you could take, I mean, just tops off the top of my head as like, crime, for example. I mean, police often get saddled with that, and for sure we get paid, to deal with law enforcement and arresting criminals and stuff like that. But ideally, in a community, that multifaceted approach where people are trying to provide opportunities and people are trying, things that City Hall is trying to accomplish and some of these organizations, so we can really divert people from getting on that criminal path. And that's not something that we can do. And we certainly want that to happen because that makes our job easier and makes our community better.
Yeah. John, how long have you been in this?
It's my 29th year.
29th year. We're going to,
Yeah.
by the way, in the upcoming episodes, we're going to have our first 3 episodes are going to be focused on each of us telling our story. And as you've spent 29 years in this, just in general, what would you say are some of the rewards or benefits of public service?
They can be really big rewards in the sense of like knowing you save someone's life. That can be very rewarding to yourself. Getting in this profession, that's what you want to do. Is you want to help people and make a difference. And it can be as big as giving CPR to a guy and bringing them back and knowing they were able to live a few more years. Or it can be as small as just on your way home and you see a car that's broke down in the middle of the road and
Change their tire.
change their tire or push them out of the road.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I always tell myself every day, I'm like, as long as I can go home at the end of the day, I'm driving home and I think to myself, okay, what is the one thing that I did today? I mean, it could be something really small or it could be something really big, but as long as I can think every single day there was some positive impact that I had while I was at work, then I was successful that day. And if we all really think about that, even the small things when you're thinking about and talking about community, even the small things that you can do that can make your community better, eventually they add up and they become big things. So, to me, that's really kind of that in a nutshell, I guess.
Yeah, that and the money, right?
Oh yeah, the money's fantastic, actually. Yeah.
So I'd laugh, but the reality is there are so many rewards with serving the community and just giving yourself to something that's bigger than you. That also presents challenges. So, Jim, what would you say is some of the challenges that come with public service?
Well, I mean, we're public officials. The expectation in law enforcement is that we don't make any mistakes, and we're human. We make mistakes. I mean, that does happen, and sometimes I think that's taken as the view of that can be looked at like it fits a certain narrative that people have, like, well, the police do this, the police do that. Well, sometimes things just get missed or overlooked. I mean, that happens. That's certainly a challenge. The staffing has been a big challenge for us. Just having enough people to get to these calls in time and try to provide the service we want to provide. That's a challenge for sure. The work is difficult. I mean, there's it is very rewarding. I mean, but it's challenging. I mean, it's stressful. It affects your home life. It affects your peers. Your relationships sometimes. I mean, sometimes the stuff that you deal with. I mean, it kind of puts you on edge and stuff like that. So that's why the mental health is so important. I mean, that we've seen that in the last 10 years or so, that grow, officer wellness and things like that. So officers find these ways to deal with those stresses in the job. But just dealing with the crime itself. I mean, and trying to get the community to participate in that process. This day and time, there's a lot of people out there, that are afraid to talk to us because of retaliation or they're being called a snitch or something like that, and that makes it very challenging. So you've seen that we've kind of switched, I don't want to say switch, but we're trying to fill that gap of that lack of participation that everybody's facing across the country with technology. And can we get technology to help us solve these cases? Because at the end of the day, we want to solve the cases, but we're really succeeding when we're preventing the crime. And that's where we need to go.
Yeah. So if I were to answer that, one of the challenges for public service for me, and a little peek behind the curtain, not only am I the chaplain, but I also serve as a pastor of a church and executive director of a 501c3 here in Sykeston. And, there are times when, quite honestly, you get fatigued and cynical
For sure. Yeah.
because you're pouring so much in, and it's like it goes from, when you're fresh in doing that, there's a thankfulness to that.
Yeah.
You get down the road and then there's an expectation of that without the thankfulness. And I think that's a reality, that brings on that compassion fatigue and stuff like that. I think that can present challenges in a great deal for people who are giving their life to something bigger than themselves.
Compassion fatigue is a real problem in law enforcement. And where that comes into play is, not only professionally, fatigue can have a negative effect on that officer, but at home, that officer comes home at the end of the day and his spouse or his child explains something to that officer that was pretty traumatic for him that day, or something that was kind of an upsetting situation for their spouse or their child. And, that officer just came home and dealt with, who knows what. And in his mind, he's like, why are you so upset about that?
Right.
And
Well, don't forget that really don't talk to me for the first 45 minutes. You know what?
well,
That's where I get in trouble. You
Yeah.
know, like I can't deal with anything for like 45 minutes, and I just need some time to decompress.
My family knows that for probably about the first hour and a half of the day, they're gonna try to make as least amount of noise that they can, and they're gonna be really quiet. They're not gonna, because I need that about an hour and a half every day just to decompress, not be around anybody, just watch some TV and just calm down. And then after that, then I'm ready to do whatever.
Yeah, I think, and you said this earlier, we were talking, about how there is every day there is some thing that's happened that's somewhat serious. I mean, multiple times a day, and us in our positions, and even street officers in their positions, they're dealing with these things, and it's a big deal. But you go home and you try to shift that gear, and man, it's I just kind of like, I just need some peace and quiet,
It's
'cause,
exhausting.
yeah, it's exhausting. They're just, God love them. I'm just like, I love my family, but I just need to, this is kind of how I say it. I got to have you guys, you got to understand. All right. And they don't really understand. How could they understand? Because they're not having those experiences, so.
Yeah, I can imagine it takes a toll. I mean, I don't deal with the amount of stress that you guys deal with or that the street officers deal with. But on those days that I do experience stress, I feel that, I feel that situation where you get home and you got to remember that, and I'm still a husband. And actually, that's probably the most important job that I have on this earth, is to be a husband and then a dad. And, there's bills in the mail, just life happens, and you just kind of have to figure out how to measure that. So I think this podcast is going to hopefully shed some light on those types of topics. And that's kind of why I wanted to go that direction just for a few minutes, just to give a little preview of what we could be talking about and some of the things that'll come.
One of the things you just kind of reminded me of something, we talk about how, as community service providers, or, providing a service to our community, making the sacrifices of being a police officer, a firefighter, EMS, any, public service worker, you make that sacrifice. But not only is that officer or that EMS, paramedic, firefighter, is he making that sacrifice, his family is making that as well.
Yeah, for sure.
They sacrifice their loved one, whether they be that whatever first responder that is, or community service worker. They're making that sacrifice to let the community have him or her.
Yeah.
For that length of time.
And on that subject, if you're just talking just about the birthdays, the holidays, that when people are Thanksgiving, they're going home, 4th of July, to spend time with their families, and things kind of ramp up for us. We got to have extra personnel. And I know you hear this, I hear it all the time about, well, how stressful, I'm missing this and I'm missing that. And it is, it's part of the lifestyle here, whether you're in communications, firefighting, EMS or whatever, you work in these holidays, and that alone, they're good. And then you add in the stress of the job with all that too. So.
Yeah, you definitely have to figure out ways to make alternative plans for holidays,
right?
Birthdays.
Yeah.
Maybe a birthday or a holiday falls on certain day of the week that you would typically traditionally celebrate.
Yeah.
Well, it may be a couple of days before, a couple of days after.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about ideas for this podcast, and it's funny how many ideas you can come up with when you're thinking about we're going to do this. And I really want to do this, especially me and you, because we both have daughters. Your daughter's 23, and so my daughter's about to turn 22. And I think it'd be really cool.
You guys are old.
No, I think it'd be really cool if we got them both in here and they could talk about from their perspective, which is a little scary. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
it's a little scary, but I think it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting for me. I don't know if I ever really sat down and asked my daughter, "What's your thoughts about my job?"
I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I have never had that conversation with my daughter as far as like,
It just is what it is.
Yeah.
Although
she's working for Missouri Children's Vision, so she's kind of following in my footsteps and providing a service to the community, which I'm super proud of. So.
Yeah, my daughter, I mean, I'd been in this job 5 years when she was born. That's all she's ever known.
Yeah, mine too.
That's pretty interesting, and I look forward to that episode and what they're going to say about you. To be honest with you,
I'll coach her up. I'm gonna coach her up.
Coach her before. Yeah, way to go. That'll be real authentic.
Yeah.
Coached by Daddy.
Yeah, we are. There will be probably some editing going on. That's for sure. Yeah.
Well, I feel comfortable about this. My daughter does not use profanity in front of me, so I know she will not cuss on this
I like
podcast.
that caveat in front of me.
In front of me, for sure.
Well, that's good.
Which I find hard to believe, honestly.
I do too, actually. So she's actually, we've had this conversation. She's 23 now, and she's actually asked me in the last year or two, "Dad, can I cuss in front of you?" And I say no.
Yeah.
Just because we're just not even going to start that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, something else we want to talk about is just the community events.
Absolutely.
That's going on. I mean, I think that's a good thing to do. Just try to promote that and things that are going on in the community. So sometimes that word doesn't get out. I don't know if you ever had that happen, that something's going on, people are moving and shaking, and you're like, what is happening today? So.
Yeah, I think really the important thing about community events too is think about the organizations that put them on, and how they benefit our community. So, going to the rodeo, going to the crawfish boil, downtown St. Patty's Day. I think we have Kenny Rogers auction and telethons coming up. So supporting those organizations in these community events is supporting your community. So that's really kind of what the podcast is about too. So
yeah, I think that'll be really good for us to do. But
yeah, it'll be good to talk about those community events, and we want to know about those events as well. So it would be helpful if you have an event that you're leading out in our community and you want to, again, let us know. You can send us an email. Again, that email address is
chief.cap.chap@gmail.com.
So creative, chief.cap.chap@gmail.com. And we'll get that information and we'll try to share as much as we can. Again, we're going to try to do this podcast on a weekly basis. We hope in the near future to have social media avenues, be able to post this stuff out there and use this just as a chance to have a good time, get information out, and to celebrate people. And that's what I'm looking forward to the most, is celebrating people, telling stories, encouraging one another, laughing with one another, and maybe getting a little taste of what it's like to sit in a room with a chief, captain, and a chaplain.
We want it to be positive. I mean, there's so much negative. We want it to be positive, and that's what we're going to look for in that service towards others. Yeah.
So any parting thoughts before we go today?
No, I'm just looking forward to really bringing folks in here and, getting to know them away from whatever, service that they provide to the community or whatever their occupation is, just learn a little bit more about them. I think, really a lot of people we work with or do business with, we really only know them as the banker or as the teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so just really kind of seeing what makes them tick.
That's good.
Yeah. And I like I said earlier, I mean, we're going to, next 3 episodes, kind of give my backstory, I think probably next time, and then maybe go to Captain Broom here and let him give his backstory, why he's doing what he's doing, you too, of course, and get that out there so people can kind of learn a little bit more about us, and
yeah, more than maybe they want to know.
Maybe.
Which is okay. So tune in next time to Chief Cap and Chap, where Chief Jim McMillan will share his story how he got here, where we are in
Right.
2025, and he'll tell that story. Until then, thank you so much for tuning in to Chief, Cap, and Chap. And remember, always
Take the high road.